Hello everybody and welcome back to the Hilltop Pillbox in Abbotsford, British Columbia, Canada. And this is going to be a rather sweeping one because we're talking about the United Kingdom, which is the whole Commonwealth, which includes South Africa and Canada, which are their own economies. And then you also have Far East Command, India, and you have Anzac. So there are four separate entities to look out for besides UK London. So we're going to take it step by step here. This is a very difficult one for one person to handle. It's highly recommended that if you do have enough people, that this is where one of the dividers happens, is that somebody takes UK London and Canada and South Africa, and the other person will take Far East Command and Anzac. But let's get right down to it here. We're going to start with the UK in Europe, and you can see on this chart it's got the UK Commonwealth, which includes South Africa and Canada, and then there's a setup chart for everything there. But if we look here, we can see that the Commonwealth produces 33, but they're going to start with a couple extra bucks. And that was after a lot of trial and error with the game, and those $2 actually make quite a difference. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And with Canada, just 10 and 10. Now, with Far East Command and Anzac, swing that one in there. Okay, Far East Command, they get 23 bucks, but they only start with 16. They're not quite ready for war. Anzac, identical to Canada, 10 and 10. And then at the same time, if you look at the order of play, it's the UK, France, and minor allies. Okay, well, that includes, of course, the French, eh? All right. And their production is 20, and they start with 10 bucks. I believe in Global 40, France is sit with 19, so Germany gets quite a kick in the economic keister there, to the good anyway, and they make an extra 19 bucks. But in this game, when they capture Paris, they just get a dime. Okay, but all of these nations go at the same time. So if you're pretty smart and aware about what's going on, you can cause a lot of problems. Because you're moving things all across the board. You have stuff all the way over in Canada that you can transport over. You obviously have UK London. You're going to have stuff in Gibraltar typically. You're going to have North Africa with a fairly large fleet. We'll talk about that. You've got all of Africa here except for a couple of Italians. And you've got a factory in South Africa. South Africa produces a man on its own, and then it can also the British can also produce down there. Well, we'll stop to talk about that right now. The UK and London, if they're finding that, you know what, anything we build here is just going to get stuck here and we can't build boats because there's too many U-boats out there, and building planes is kind of useless because the Germans aren't doing Sea Lion, you can actually use your money to build things elsewhere. So you can build in Canada. Okay, you can build 2 units per turn in Canada. In South Africa, the UK can build 1 unit, and Far East Command and Anzac can each produce 2 units with UK money. So the UK is not strictly having to just crank up a bunch of stuff on the island, and especially if Germany starts an aggressive bombing campaign, putting the factory out of commission, Britain can still build. They're just going to be building elsewhere. And like I say, 2 units in each of their other capital factories, except for South Africa, they could build 1 unit. So looking at the UK, again folks, there are so many variables to this game. That first turn, the German second impulse, rolling for all the Vichy territories and the Vichy ships, it's really hard to say, I'm going to do this game. Because some of the rolls might go really south on you and you just can't do what you wanted to do. And I'm going to give you guys the worst case scenario if you're UK. And the worst case scenario is that the Germans have been able to come by, take out that fleet and the destroyer. They've sailed around and they've taken out that little fleet there. And then when they rolled for Vichy ships, they got a couple. And the rest got scuttled or turned Vichy. And the British got none. That's a worst case scenario, which means that there's going to be a very large presence in and around the British Isles. And so Britain, you will not be sending anything to help the French or the Dutch or anybody else on the continent for quite some time. Give it 4 turns probably, maybe 5, depending on how things are going. There is sometimes an ability for you to sneak in some destroyers in Canada, because Canada can build 1, possibly 2 a turn, depending on how it uses its money. And then you as Britain can build a couple there. So you could build 3 or 4 destroyers in 1 turn over in Canada, and that might be enough to take care of some of the pesky U-boats. Again, this is all supposition. You might not. Okay? You also do have, down here in Gibraltar, you've got a couple destroyers and a submarine. Now, as in 40, subs can go through the Straits of Gibraltar without any regard for who owns it. So the Italians have some subs in here that can get out. So you do have to be careful about that. The other thing that may or may not happen is that you have your 2 destroyers and a transport down here, just off the Golden Coast here of Africa. And you have the Graf Spee. And since it gets to attack twice, it'll come over here on the first turn in the hands of a good German player. And it'll probably sink both of these things. If it doesn't, hey, good for you. That means you'll have at least the transport left over. And with the transport, it's highly recommended you come down here. You can pick up an Anzac man or a South African man, come back and activate Liberia. That'll give you $1 and also give you a free infantry. And then on your next turn, since there's no more Graf Spee around, you can just simply slide on over to Brazil and start activating that. So that'll be $4 for you, and 1 for Liberia is 5. And you're going to need that because typically right off the hop you are going to be losing Alexandria and Lower Egypt and probably Upper Egypt in pretty short order. Okay, it's just going to happen because Italy is going to be able to crank in some stuff. But you British are saying, well, wait a second, what about Taranto? Let's just do Taranto and everything will be fine. We're going to have a quick commercial break here and get rid of the minor factory. All right there. So you're thinking, what about Taranto? Why can't we just take all this stuff? You know, got ourselves a fighter and maybe we can bring some stuff over, land in Malta, look at all that stuff. We could take care of that battleship. And then there's a couple, there's a cruiser, a couple destroyers and a sub. Yeah, we could handle that. Look at what we got. Look at that. Let's go. And we could bring down a couple of our bombers from UK, slide on down. Hey, let's do it. Problem. You're not at war with Italy. In fact, Italy's not at war with anybody until the start of Italy's turn, and then Italy decides if they're going to declare war, and they usually do declare war on the side of Germany, which you have to do. You can't say, I'm going to join with the Allies. Okay, so obviously you got to join with Germany, and typically that means that if Marseille went free French, the Italians will attack it, and if the German allies have softened up Yugoslavia, perhaps Italy will do that. But the bigger threat is for Italy to support Tobruk, bring down a few things. So they have a couple of transports and they can load up 4 units, bring them down, and all of a sudden Tripoli is bustling with stuff. So, what's your answer for that? Well, if you want to hang on to Cairo, the cold hard truth is you have to build a factory. And I know a lot of British players say, oh, please don't make me build a factory. I don't want to build a factory in Cairo. It's going to fall, and then they're going to use it to build stuff and come kill the Russians or come kill India. And that very well may be, but if you don't build a factory, you're just going to lose Cairo. And they're going to have a factory in Tobruk that's cranking out stuff anyway. They're going to be cranking out stuff and sailing it across the Med, landing it in Syria anyway. So, if you want to remain a threat and remain viable, you have got to do something in Cairo by means of a factory. You also have your South African factory that can crank things out, but South Africa only makes $3, and Britain can only put 1 thing there. So the most you can put in South Africa at a time is 2 units. Okay, so that's not really going to be cranking out a lot of stuff. Now, South Africa, for what it's worth, can hold on to its money. Doesn't have to spend it. So it could save and save and save until it has $15 or something, and then throw down a couple of tanks and a man. Okay, you could certainly do that. Okay? The other thing South Africa can do is right off the hop grab this transport and move it over here. And if Madagascar, for the role for the Vichy for the French, has become Vichy, they can take that. I think you see that in my gameplay video actually, so you might want to take a look at that. But they can also go 3, so they'll go 1, 2, 3, and they can join in on an attack on Ethiopia on round 2. Remember, they are not at war with Italy, so you can't look at this. You can't say, hey, I've got 2 guys in Alexandria, and I got air, and I got transport, I could land, I can take Tobruk, no problem. No, you can't, you're not at war. So get that out of your head. Alright. So England, what you need to assume is that this is gone. You need to assume that every ship you've got around the British Isles, except for the destroyer that's hunkered down with the French fleet there, you have to assume they're all gone. This could survive. It's possible that it could survive, because there's nothing that can get to it in 1 turn. But in 2 turns, the Germans could say, we really don't want you having those destroyers in the sub. And on the first impulse, they could move the De Graaf Spee up 2 and move 3 submarines, pardon me, down 2. And on the second impulse, they could kill that stuff. They could do it. Highly unlikely, but they could. So England, you will not have the Royal Navy around the Isles. That's just a gimme. So be ready, ready to react for that. Again, it's highly recommended, as in 40, that you do not scramble to defend the fleets. Now you look at it and you can see, okay, do some math, do some mental math, and count the pips and see what are the odds of you being able to repel and hang on to your fighters. And you might say, you know what, it's a long shot, but it's worth it. Or you might say, no, it's a long shot and it's not worth it. It's up to you what you want to do. If you put the hurt on Germany pretty quickly, it might slow down them a bit later, especially if they don't build aircraft on their first turn. If they don't build aircraft to replace losses, you might be forcing them to build aircraft on rounds 2 and 3 to make up what you've shot down. Lots of decisions to make. The other thing that the British can do here is you've got a transport, so you can load up a couple guys and you can come on over here to this Sea Zone 42. Now in Sea Zone 42 you got some neat things you can do. It is recommended that you plop a guy on Crete, because that is where the Italian planes will land if they come to sink your thing, if they own Crete. So you want to hop onto there and own it, and you can also put one on Corinth. In this game you're allowed to unload and pick up in different zones, but you can't move through a sea zone to do it. So you take a guy from here, you sail your 2 up to Sea Zone 42. One can unload in Corinth and one can unload in Crete. Okay? It's a great idea. Now Italy could take its first turn and trying to capture those back. They sure can. In fact, you probably want them to, because that'll slow down their rush on Cairo. If they don't, if they leave you there, okay, and don't kill your fleet, which I'm sure they will, but for whatever reason, if you still have a guy left, then you can go and activate Greece. The other option you have is to just take 2 guys, come up here, drop one in Crete and drop one in Greece and activate Greece that way. Just know that there's a lot of Axis Minor stuff here that'll come kill Greece pretty quickly. But the neat thing, and this is something that's not in 40, is that this fleet here, if it comes up here, you get all these boats here. So you get a coastal battleship and a couple of destroyers to add to your fleet. Okay? Now that sounds really good, but when you look at the Italian fleet in this game and pair it up with the number of planes and fighters and you know, the bombers and whatnot that they have, you're still probably going to lose it, but hopefully you can kill some of the Italian, the expensive stuff the Italians have. Alright? So that can make it interesting. For those of you wondering, if you've seen my Germany tutorial, you remember that when you take Denmark or Norway, you roll for the fleets. And you're saying, well, why don't we roll for Greece? Well, because Greece is one of these nifty little countries that says pro-Allied. So if it's pro-Allied, there is no rolling. You just take it. Okay? So England, you have a couple of other options as you survey your little kingdom here. One of them is you have a couple of bombers. Now what are you going to do with those bombers? It's totally up to you. You can just start bombing and bombing and bombing if you want. But in this game, you want to bring your fighters with you as escorts because they can intercept you with fighters. Okay? So the nice thing is that if you're going to bomb factories, it keeps the German fighters on an air base close to home. If the fighters aren't there, then it's a regular bombing thing where they roll the AA, hit on a 2 on a D12, and yeah, you just carry it out normally. Strategic bombers do 2d6 damage. Tactical bombers do 1d6 damage. Okay, so it can be pretty devastating. So this game really encourages you to keep some fighters at home to kind of guard the gates. What else do we have here? I think that's pretty much it. So those bombers you can bomb with. You can also build commandos. The commandos are awesome because you can drop them from the sky. And your airborne troops, obviously, you drop from the sky. So they can start here. And in the last one, if you guys watched my gameplay video, you'll probably remember that they came down here and landed in Sicily and Sardinia and took the islands. It's $3, right? But it also really slowed the Italian march on Cairo. The Italians eventually took Cairo, but they had to go take Sicily and Sardinia first just to get that $3 back. That's a lot of money to the Italians, so they needed to take that back. Britain's NOs are pretty simple. They need to they hold on to everything on the European side of the board. So that's everything in Africa and Europe and Canada. They get an extra $5. Pretty tough. Usually on the first round, Italy takes Lower Egypt and Alexandria. But you never know. You can fight it back and perhaps gain that $5. Another neat one is that there are no U-boats in the Atlantic. Now the Atlantic encompasses everything around the British Isles and of course the Atlantic Ocean. Okay. And it spells it out in the rules exactly where it is, but we don't include the Denmark Straits because you can't go in there if you don't own Denmark. So if they plant a U-boat in there, how do you kill it? You can't fly in there, you can't send in boats, so we don't include that one. So that's pretty much it for your options for Britain. So you can send this whole fleet up here. You've got a battleship and you'd add a coastal battleship. So, you know, you can have some fun. With the Italians attacking you, and if they don't attack you, hey, then you can, you know, come down here and maybe build an air base in Cairo so you can scramble some fighters and load up some fighters down here. You know, that could be a real defense. It'd be a really tough nut for them to crack. But Britain, again, it's going to be reactionary. What do the Germans do on their first and second impulse? So your reactions are, you know, they have to be true to what's happening. Don't forget, you've got all of these convoy zones. This is where your money is, UK. Okay, you have got to protect these convoy zones. Okay, you got a 3, you got a 3, you got a 2, and then you've got, ooh, where'd it go? Another 2 down here. Okay, you got $10 out in the Atlantic, and that's a good chunk. That's going to be over a third of what you typically make on a turn. So if those U-boats run amok and they only cost the German player 5, that can make for a really long day. Okay, so that's the UK Europe. Now we're going to slide on over. Well, we'll talk about France really quickly because it's on this side of the board. Again, France, you don't know what you're going to have to work with. You won't know even if these troops survived, because you could roll everything here to go Vichy, and if you do, these guys have nowhere to go and they just get eliminated. You could end up with all of them, and this whole area could be Free French. You might have a couple of subs. You might have that whole fleet. You might have that whole fleet. You just don't know. Very reactionary, but it's important for you to husband your resources and not just throw them away in little piecemeal attacks. If you come after the Italians, bring or be smart about it. Okay? If you bring everything in one, the Italians will kill all the French Foreign Legion, and that'll be it. So if you bring all 7 guys and say, we're going to take Tripoli, and you get over there in a couple turns and thump, the Italians will kill all of them. And then all they have to do is send a tank through, and they take all this money. Okay? Do not make it easy on Italy. Okay? Give them multiple choices, and hopefully Britain is going to do the same thing on this side. Make Italy stretch her economy in all sorts of different directions. And that even goes for Syria over here. Syria will get taken. Okay? So typically this French guy comes down to Transjordan, hopefully to keep the canal a little bit more secure with the help of some troops that move up from Cairo. But going into Syria, you know, trying to hold Syria is, you're just not going to do it. You can't reinforce it, and you don't want to draw a bunch of troops out of Britain, out of Cairo to go beef up Syria, because you're just throwing away in a futile defense. Okay, but react honestly how things are going. If you've got a lot of material, maybe you want to make some daring attacks against the Germans. If you don't have much material, protect it and wait for the British and the Canadians and the Americans to come and save you. So that's about it for the French. There's not much else to be said for them. Keep an eye on which of your territories go Vichy, especially Madagascar. That's a real tricky one. And the other one that's really tricky is Corsica, because Corsica, if that goes free French, then the British can land there easily, which means if the Italians build a fleet here and the British have bulked up their bomber command, they can fly on down and just hammer that thing and land in Corsica, which really cheers up the Italians, that's for sure. They just go crazy. Alright, so here we are at Far East Command in Anzac. And Far East Command in Anzac really are bare bones in 1939. Here we go. You got 5 men for Far East Command. FEC is what we call them. Sometimes you just say India. And then you have these 5 boats. Alright. That's all you got. And you have got to protect this stuff. If the Japanese come running over, you got nothing to stop them with. So hopefully you have a bit of warning and you can bulk up. You do also have 1 man in Hong Kong and a couple of naval ports. And then you've got a transport and a destroyer. And then down in Singapore you got a couple men with a naval port and a coastal gun, which is useless versus a land-based attack. If Japan does not do a J1 attack in this game, okay, it's a long shot, but if they don't do a J1 attack, you need to grab that guy from Hong Kong, put him on a boat, and get him the heck out of there. Alright? And because you got the port, he can go 1, 2, 3. And you can bring him all the way to Burma and then try to bring your transport further west. You could drop him off in Singapore if you wanted to, but he's going to die. The Japanese, as we've seen in previous videos, have just got too much material. You cannot do the whole stand thing. It's just going to be the Alamo all over again, and even worse. Okay, it's no contest. The Japanese can just bring so much, and you cannot get over there. The big question is, when do I send stuff into China? Well, you can do it as soon as the Japanese declare war on you. Then you can start feeding stuff into China, and if the Japanese attack you on turn 1, there you go, you can do it. Not a lot more to say about FEC. Save your money, build men. I'd highly recommend building a fortress, at least 1, if not 2. Australia, Anzac, same thing. You're going to have very little to start with. You've got 2 men there. You got 1 man in New Guinea. What you want to do on round 1 is move the New Guinea over to Dutch New Guinea and get you an extra $5 as long as the Japanese haven't taken any of these other islands from you. And essentially what you want to do is run some guys off to the Dutch East Indies and just try to get your coffers filled with money. Don't spend your money if you don't have to. Now you can only build 3 units here, okay, until you're at war. And then you can build 10. Okay, then you can upgrade it and build 10. Okay, same with Calcutta. Okay, you can start with only 3. But the UK can also build. Okay, so the UK can build on your stuff and help you out if you need it. But it's a good idea to save your money until you're at war and then start flushing out the fleet a bit. Now again, you got to react to what's going on with Japan. If Japan is getting real aggressive, well, you just can't sit around looking at your stacks of cash. You're going to have to definitely defend. And again, I highly recommend building a bunker and stacking it full of 10 men. Okay? Very important to make it a very unappealing target for the Japanese. These Dutch ships will get rolled for on turn 1. If you get them, awesome. If you don't, well, crap. If they get sunk, nothing lost, nothing gained. Oh well. Okay. Your job as the Anzac is very typical to 1940. It's basically to give the Japanese something to think about and be a safe port in a storm for the American fleet if it makes its way down here. It is recommended that you scorched earth some of these things. Okay, I don't think I mentioned it with Hong Kong. You got to fry those 2 naval ports before the Japanese take them. So if it's a J1 attack, well, nothing you can do. But on turn 1, when you evacuate Hong Kong, fry those naval ports. I'd hang on to these naval ports for a couple of turns until you have to get rid of them. Same with Singapore. They could take Singapore in round 1. You're probably never going to use Singapore. So if the Japanese are coming for you, it's probably a good idea to get rid of that. And the Aussies have these wonderful naval ports here. If you think the Japanese are going to come and take Northern Australia, take that naval port. Because if they take Northern Australia, they can go all the way around your island and not be stopped by anything. Okay? So that's a one you want to get rid of. If you take these Dutch islands, get rid of the naval ports. You've got to slow down the Japanese. If they're moving 3, life's just going to be terrible. So New Zealand, be annoying, save your money, build a fort at some point. If you take Dutch New Guinea and you're not at war, you'll be making $16 each round until you're at war. And then if you take Dutch East Indies, there's another couple bucks. Sleeves, all these things here. You don't have to fight, obviously, because you're allied with the Dutch. You can just take these things and add the money to your coffers. So you could be sitting with 30 or 40 bucks after a couple or 3 rounds, and you'll know what to do. All right, that's pretty much it. Yeah, sorry we got cut off there. Battery died, so we're just going to finish off here with the Anzac. Just make sure that you are not going to get taken. If this gets taken, the Allies taking it back is a long shot. So build your fortification, load it up with men. And destroyers and subs are typically what you're going to be building. The reason for that is that you can help protect this convoy zone for the Far East Command, and protect this convoy zone for the Far East Command, and should it come down to it, you could protect this convoy zone for Far East Command, and still yet another one. Alright, they need a lot of help. Half of their income is out in the water. They're going to lose Hong Kong, worth 2. They're going to lose Singapore, worth 2. And if they lose the convoy zones, all they have is $9. And then the Japanese are going to start bombing them. Okay? Something else that the Japanese love to come and sit on is the Solomons. It's only worth $1, but it's from Far East Command. So be careful with that. But if Anzac and Far East Command work together, they can really be annoying to the Japanese player, especially if the Japanese player does not declare war on the first turn. If there's a J1 attack, well, things can go south. But if they don't, Anzac, come on over here, grab Dutch East Indies. Make this guy here jump over the border into Dutch New Guinea. And then Far East Command here is going to grab some guys and come over here and put them on Sumatra. The Hong Kong guy, he's going to come down here and he's going to go on to Sumatra. And you can load up the islands and make them much more difficult. I've actually seen people try to fight for Borneo. It's difficult because it's well within range of everything. Right from the Japanese homeland, 1, 2. And they're in Brunei. 3 because they've got the ports, and boom, they can bring a world of hurt. But remember, for the Japanese, their one Achilles heel is that they do not have a lot of ground forces. They do not have a lot of stuff that'll hold territory. So they got to spend a lot of money on that. Plus, they cannot let their navy shrink, because America will be replying in kind. So, Calcutta, you need to shore up, and once you're at war with Japan, try to help out the Chinese. Okay, that's key for you. Anzac, make sure the Japanese keep looking at you every now and again. Give them something to think about. That's pretty much it for the Commonwealth, around the world, and all the neat things you can do. I did want to mention the last thing here. This is the radar piece that we say is only buildable by the British, because at this time the British were the only people who had such a beast. And it's a nice little piece from Historical Board Gaming. It's a little two-piece thing here that you just go ahead and set up. And we're still testing out different ideas with it, but we've decided at some point that it's probably going to be an expensive piece, but it can get bombed just like anything else. So if this thing goes into London, all right, let's just set it up here in London, in the lower part of England, okay? Any fighters that are located in that spot will get one free round of combat in defense. But then those the radar towers are probably going to cost something like 15, and they can get bombed out of commission. They can take up to 5 points of damage, and they can get bombed to the point where they're useless until they get repaired. We're still debating a few of those things. Anybody who has any great ideas about the radar, let us know. We figured the first round of combat being a freebie is probably pretty good. Maybe a little OP if they're shooting back at 4. Maybe say they get a free round of combat, at 6, pardon me, as fighters defend at. So maybe have them defend at a 4 instead of a 6 on a D12. We're still banding about ideas as to how to precisely use the radar towers, but we believe that we'd love to make it part of the game, and prevent sea line, and maybe prevent some bombing of England as best they can. So, and that's what radar did. I think it's very indicative of what happened in reality, and we like to bring in as much reality as we can without breaking the game. And we're hoping that if you have to pay 15 for it, it's something the British player will really have to think about, because they have a lot of problems, especially in Africa and all the rest. Alright folks, well again, thanks so much for watching, and if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please put them in the comments below. I have decided now that when I'm done all of the videos for the play, and I have 2 left, the US and Nationals China will be my next one, and then I'll finish off with Italy. I will do a final one that will be a survey of the turn order and any comments and questions that have come up about some specifics that maybe I didn't mention, just because it's something that I've done so much that I forgot to mention it. And then you'll get some real neat tips and tricks as to how to get this game going. Thanks again though for watching, and hey, keep smiling, have a great time playing this wonderful game, and may the dice be with you.